After a hiatus of a few weeks, we continue our sutta studies, explorations, and I wanted us to go back to the one that was scheduled a few weeks ago, and that is the Bhikkhuni Sutta. And this is an unusual sutta because it allows us to take a sneak peek or get a closer look into the life of human beings from 26 centuries ago. Specifically, not just any human beings, but those that live the monastic life. The monastic life. Specifically, we see an encounter where the, if I can say, protagonist, the protagonist is, again, Venerable Ananda. And he was the attendant and cousin of Lord Buddha's. And this is happening at a time after Lord Buddha's death, his Mahaparinibbāna. And we see how a bhikkhuni invites or calls upon by sending someone over to get Venerable Ananda to come and visit her in the nunnery, in the convent where she was staying with the other bhikkhunis, claiming that she is sick and she would like Venerable Ananda to come. And in those days, the medicine was hearing a Dhamma talk. However, that is what's on the surface. But what's happening underneath is we see a woman who is interested in Venerable Ananda. A man. An old man, we have to say, because if this is truly happening after the Buddha's demise, then we know that Venerable Ananda was at least 80 years old. But he was also very known throughout the Sasana in different regions of India. And he was the keeper of the Dhamma, in a sense. So this comes to us from the Anguttara Nikāya, the Numerical Discourses. It's from the Book of the Fours. It's Sutta number 159. So it's Anguttara Nikāya 4.159. And the title is Bhikkhuni Sutta, Discourse to a Bhikkhuni. So because of health reasons, I will not be able to go deep into more than what is sufficient, what is necessary to do the sutta justice, as they say, because I cannot be sitting long and I have to get up. So nevertheless, I will do my best to do it justice. So it is from the Book of the Fours, Sutta number 159, Bhikkhuni Sutta. At one time, Venerable Ananda was staying at Ghosita's monastery in Kosambi, when a certain bhikkhuni addressed a man and said, "Good one, please go and approach Venerable Ananda, and after paying homage to him with your head at his feet, convey to him this message in my words. Venerable sir, this bhikkhuni is gravely ill and is suffering badly. She pays homage with her head at the feet of Venerable Ananda. It would be good if Venerable Ananda could approach the monastery of the bhikkhunis and approach this one out of compassion." In the sutta, we don't have a name, nor in the commentaries, as to who or what's the bhikkhuni's name. But it really doesn't matter. It is the normal, or rather human, elements that we are after. And what she ends up becoming, meaning we're going to see in a moment how this sutta unfolds, but because of her instigating, we will get a wonderful Dhamma discourse by Venerable Ananda. So, by saying, yes, Venerable Lady, the man agreed to do what that Bhikkhuni had said, as he went and approached the Venerable Ananda. And after paying homage to him with his head at the Venerable's feet and sitting to one side, he conveyed to him the following message. Venerable Sir, this Bhikkhuni is gravely ill and is suffering badly. She pays homage with her head at the feet of Venerable Ananda. It would be good if Venerable Ananda could approach the monastery of the Bhikkhunis and approach this one out of compassion. The Venerable Ananda accepted the message by remaining silent. Then Venerable Ananda, by taking his outer robe and alms bowl, went to the monastery of the Bhikkhunis. Now, on seeing the Venerable Ananda approaching in the distance, that Bhikkhuni quickly removed her robes and laid on her bed, while barely covering herself from her head down with a thin cloth, as she laid visibly naked underneath. So now we see what her plan was. And this obviously is a serious offense, but we don't know of the age of the Bhikkhuni, how late in life or early in life, shall we say, she did become ordained. But we see that what she's doing is coming from lust. So it's a trap in a sense for both of them, because if let's say she were to be successful from this point on, if we just go ahead and do inferential processing and just look at, okay, what would this entail? She would be entrapping both of themselves, both Venerable Ananda, had he been another bhikkhu. However, he's an arahant at this point. So it is impossible for him to fall for these things. But she, on the other hand, is committing a grave offense, even though she's not doing, let's say, going through the action of engaging in any sexual contact yet. But most probably she had already begun in her mind. And that, as we know, is extremely important, because that's where kamma begins. Having entered that Bhikkhuni's chamber, the Venerable Ananda sat on the prepared seat and said, Sister, this body is the product of food. And even though being supported by food, one should abandon the attachment to food. Notice how he did not first begin with a question. We have several suttas throughout the Nikāyas where, whether it's Lord Buddha going and visiting a bhikkhu or someone, or another bhikkhu going to see, let's say Venerable Sariputta is going to see someone, or Venerable Ananda, they always ask, how are you doing? Is the pain reducing or increasing? Is there a decrease in the level of suffering? Here we see Venerable Ananda just straight away jump into giving a discourse, because apparently he must have picked up what was going on, and he wanted to admonish her in the form of talking about the Pancha Upadana Khanda, meaning he's jumping right into the ahara, meaning the nutrition, the nutriments, the food that we need, because he sees how she is fixated on her body, first of all. There's an infatuation with the body. We have to look deeper than what the words might be on the surface representing. That's why we cannot look at suttas in a vacuum. We need to look at the contextual elements underneath, beneath it, in the back of it, around it, reading through between the lines, as they say. and really transport ourselves to that place, to that time period, and realize that we are dealing with human beings who have the same frailties as we do, worldlings. So he's going after the body's need for food, but he's not going to just stop there, because he's going to lay out the four things that are necessary in this case for the formation of a body. And let's see how it unfolds. So first he mentions food. Next he says, sister, this body is the product of craving. So first it was the product of food, now it is the product of craving. And even though being supported by craving, one should abandon craving. Sister, this body is the product of comparing and conceit, comparing and contrast, basically. And even though being supported by the tendency to compare, one should abandon conceit. This is mana. This is when we're always looking and gauging where we are, who we are, how we are with others around us. It adds a different nuance to who and how or what we see ourselves as, which usually creates agitation in the mind, usually. But we'll see in a minute how Venerable Ananda is going to use this for something noble, shall we say. And next he says, sister, this body is the product of sexual intercourse. But the Blessed One has declared clearly how sexual intercourse destroys the very bridge that takes us to the culmination of the holy life. So Venerable Ananda quickly targeted the main issue, but not without compassionately drawing a wonderful boundary where he would place within gems of the Dhamma, because he saw that this woman was indeed mesmerized by her body. She wanted to entice him. So basically the whole theme of it was sexual intercourse. But Venerable Ananda just clearly draws here very quickly, don't even think about that, he says, sister, because Lord Buddha made it very clear that this is a bridge that, well, actually, this destroys the very bridge, rather, that takes us to the culmination of the holy life, which is Nibbāna. And then Venerable Ananda goes into elaborating each of these 4 points. Now, sister, what is the meaning behind the statement? This body is the product of food, and while being supported by food, one should abandon the attachment to food. Here, sister, food should be looked at through wise reflection, yoniso manasikara. It is not to be seen as amusement, nor to be intoxicated by, nor for looking a certain way or to look beautiful or attractive. Food is simply consumed to maintain and support this body, to avoid getting sick, and to help one lead the holy life. Thus, the person considers the following: I will eliminate the earlier unwholesome feelings and not arouse any new ones. I will live blamelessly, living healthy for my comfortable abiding. This is part of the chant that we monastics have to recite, or at least bear in mind, while we're about to consume food. Before we start consuming the food, we look at the bowl, we look at the plate, we observe it. There's sati there. You might be starving. Your stomach might be growling. You might have not eaten for several hours or several days. That is not an invitation for asati, mindlessness, nor for wrong attention. ayoniso manasikara, but it is a great opportunity for yoniso manasikara, meaning to really dig into that moment where you're face to face with something probably very delicious. You're finding that moment as an opportunity to check and see the agitation in the heart, because craving is there. Look at that. Oh, that's delicious. I haven't had this meal for many, many days or months or years. Now it's there in front of me. Oh, smell that fragrance coming in. There's that seasoning in there, etc. Or the look of it. This is a great opportunity to break free. This is a great opportunity to experience Nibbāna. Venerable Ananda is saying, food becomes a tremendously powerful gateway for awakening. Food. In this manner, one abandons the attachment to food while being supported by food. So Venerable Ananda is saying food has to be eliminated through food. How can we eliminate food? Through food. The thing that we're about to eat or drink. When we look at it with sati, when we look at it with understanding as to what is going on, without just shoving it down, putting it in our mouth, chewing it away, and in the process not even taste the food, because basically it is just raga or lusting after the food that is driving the whole process. And the person looks down, suddenly the bowl is empty or the plate is empty. Where did it go? And you look at the clock and it's been maybe a minute and a half, when it easily could have taken an hour and a half if sati was being used. There's a sutta in the Majjhima Nikāya where Lord Buddha is being meticulously observed by this young Brahmin who follows him for about 7 months. And in it says beautifully how Lord Buddha would even chew every single thing in it that he was eating, including a single rice grain that was about to go down his throat, but it would not do so unless it was touched by the mindfulness of Lord Buddha. Meaning his teeth would come together, or he would touch the rice grain in his mouth, either through the tongue, through the palate, or the teeth, somewhere. His mind was there with every single grain of rice. How can there be lust? Lust and sati cannot coexist. They can't. The moment the flashlight of sati is turned on and the battery's there, and you have a strong beam of light on it, whatever it is, the power that it had of engulfing us, of blinding us, is no more there. And that's another way of looking at avidya. Avidya. The other day I was asked to give a discourse on how to teach the Paticcasamuppada to a group of bhikkhus in Sri Lanka. And these elder monks were asking how I personally approach discussing the topic. And I said, every single one of the links of the Paticcasamuppada, the 12 links of causal relations, each of them has a self-destruct button, a way to end the whole entire cycle, because each of the links has within it the Four Noble Truths. And if each of the Four Noble Truths set, 4 of them, right? Dukkha, Samudaya, Nirodha, and Magga. When you have the third one, Nirodha, each of the links has the potential of an exit point. because each of the links has within it avidya. So this is an opportunity where food, you're eating the food, because as Venerable Ananda said, this body needs food. This path is not an extremist path like the path of the Nigantanata Puttas, the Jains or others. That's why it's called the Majjhima Pada, the middle path. We use food, we use desire, we use all of these things, but we use them to our advantage, not to the advantage of ignorance, to perpetuate our existence in samsara, but to perpetuate a path that, and the strengthening of a path that leads us out of samsara. That's the difference. On the surface, it might look like the bhikkhu is sitting there to eat and eating his food. But samadhi is there, sati is there. They are not prey to sankharas. They are watching. Even if the sankharas show up, they're saying, hello, I see you. Sati is there. You're invested in sati, not in the consumption of the food, nor in the consumption of food for the purpose of beautifying the body. Beautifying the body. I might have mentioned once how I came across some bhikkhus who were even dyeing their hair that is not even supposed to be on their scalp, on their head. They had let it grow to about maybe 1 finger width or maybe 2. They weren't living in the jungle, by the way, where they couldn't find razors. They were living in modern societies, Europe. And they were dyeing their hair black. That is beautification. That is trying to look to look younger. Wanting better robes. Why? Why? Is it keeping me warm? Is it hiding my privates? Is it protecting me from the elements? And then that is sufficient. Similarly with food. Do I really need that second helping of this favorite dish that I have in front of me, even if it's being offered? Do I really need the second helping? Or 1 full plate is enough? Venerable Sariputta would say, walk away. Walk away from the food, even if it's like, especially if you feel like you could eat a few more morsels of it. Just walk away a little bit hungry, which modern dietitians are saying the same thing today. So, eliminating food through food. Next he goes, this therefore is the meaning behind the statement. This body is the product of food, and while being supported by food, one should abandon the attachment to food. Next, sister, what is the meaning behind the statement? This body is the product of craving, and while being supported by craving, one should abandon craving. Excuse me. Here, sister, the bhikkhu hears, such and such a bhikkhu has destroyed the contaminants of the mind, the asavas, in this very life, whereby he now lives through direct understanding and by his own realization in the taintless liberation of the heart, the liberation through wisdom. So, someone who has attained Nibbāna. So someone hears, a bhikkhu hears about another bhikkhu, that they have attained the freedom from the asavas. Now, what does the bhikkhu do? If you are a human being and you hear about something like this, naturally there is this desire, if you haven't attained it yourself, the person would feel some longing, which in this case, Venerable Ananda is talking about craving, tanha. And he continues, then in hearing this, it occurs to the other bhikkhu when will I too be able to destroy the contaminants of the mind, the asavas, in this very life, whereby I may also now live through direct understanding and by my own realization in the taintless liberation of the heart, the liberation through wisdom. And after some time has passed, while being supported by this craving for liberation, he too abandons craving itself. Look at the word supported by this craving for liberation. Remember, Venerable Ananda in the beginning said, this body is supported by food. Next, you need to be supported by craving. Lord Buddha didn't say craving of all kinds is bad and you have to eliminate it and that's it. That would be completely non-practical and nonsensical thing to be said. But Lord Buddha never said such a thing, because Lord Buddha had to use the bathroom. He had to eat. When he felt a chill come, he would cover himself with an extra layer of robes. He was thirsty. Remember from the Nibbāna Sutta? When he asked Venerable Ananda to go and fetch him a bowl full of water for him to drink. What is that? All these are aspects of craving in the form of desire, in the form of a need to be met. Now, I think you might have guessed it, what's going to come in a minute is craving is to be eliminated through craving, just like food is to be eliminated through food. You are not a slave to these processes. You're seeing them for what they are, basically. This, therefore, is the meaning behind the statement. This body is the product of craving, and while being supported by craving, one should abandon craving. In the hands, metaphorical hands, of a wise person, craving itself is a tool for wisdom, just like the first noble truth. Why is it a truth? Why is it even noble? Because for the person who is wise, who is thirsty, and who is sick and tired of roaming about in the cyclical, non-ending, aimless process of samsara, for such a person, even dukkha becomes a tool for liberation. It's a fuel. It's a means to an end, in a sense, through discernment, through wisdom. So in this case, craving itself, which you can say is the second noble truth, is being used to eliminate craving itself. So we should not be caught or stuck on words, which is something that I have seen in all basic philosophical schools, in all different religions that I've been exposed to, studied, researched, and especially in the realm of Lord Buddha's dispensation. People read, study this and that, and they pick up, they get stuck rather, nail themselves to these labels. Tanha, oh, we have to stay away from tanha. Okay. But remember what is constantly admonished, what is constantly taught and instructed about this path, about this Dhamma? It's all about wisdom. Where's the wisdom in that? That's why when students come out and say, yes, Bhante, but what about this? And they throw some intellectual mumbo jumbo in my direction. I have to go ahead and probe as to whether the student has truly understood the meaning behind the words. Is it lived? Is it a living phenomenon for such a person? Is it affecting their behavior? And how so? If it is kusala, then it means there must be vidya. If it is akusala, then it must be promulgated, pushed, promoting, if it's avidya, akusala. and vice versa. So craving is just a word in this case, but the meaning behind it, can you apply craving to cut craving off? Can you apply craving by seeing through? Similarly with sila, similarly with precepts and rules. I've seen people who, for lack of a better word, they become self-righteous, listing the rules they follow, the Vinaya rules they follow. Meanwhile, you look at them and they haven't gotten it. It's just pretending, because they have not allowed the truth of sila to really, really send down its roots for it to turn into adhisila, higher virtuous behavior. And that's how you know if the person is noble, not the amount of rules they follow. That would be nonsense. And what, sister, is the meaning behind the statement? This body is the product of comparing and conceit. And while being supported by the tendency to compare, one should abandon conceit. Here, sister, the bhikkhu hears, such and such a bhikkhu has destroyed the contaminants of the mind, the asavas, in this very life, whereby he now lives through direct understanding and by his own realization in the taintless liberation of the heart, the liberation through wisdom. Then in hearing this, it occurs to this bhikkhu, that venerable bhikkhu has destroyed the contaminants of the mind, the asavas, in this very life, whereby he now lives through direct understanding and by his own realization in the taintless liberation of the heart, the liberation through wisdom. Well, if he could do it, then so can I. See, you cannot have mana, or in this case, conceit, or comparing contrast, or comparing conceit, without also having somewhere there craving as well. So they lead to each other. Yes, we see it throughout the suttas, how these two, again, like I said earlier about tanha, these are unwholesome when in the hands of a worldling and a putujjana who lacks wisdom. But when you are dealing with a bhikkhu, or when you are dealing with a person, forget about the bhikkhu part, a person who hears about someone who has attained, let's say a layperson who hears about Chitta, the householder, who was an anagami, or Visakha, a layperson who was an anagami, or Hattaka of Alavi, who was a layperson, but who was also an anagami. Through the centuries, something happens to your heart, and you get goosebumps all around your body, just seeing, just hearing the beauty of such a mind, the heart, and it does something to you. That is what Venerable Ananda is trying to describe here to the bhikkhuni. There is a subtle comparing and contrasting, of course, because you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're seeing, yeah, but I'm not there yet. Such a person does not stop at that point. He says, well, if they could do it, how come I can't? So I should be able to. What do we take refuge in when we're doing the tisarana? When you're saying, Buddhaṃ saranam gacchāmi, what is that? Buddhaṃ saranam gacchāmi. It is not the physical body of the Buddha, which is gone. It is the possibility of you to attain to that level of awakening, which is the same throughout for all arahants. And Lord Buddha was the first arahant in this dispensation. That's why he taught. He taught so that he could help us all, so long as this sasana is alive, kicking and well, that we can also taste that. What is that then? So every time you are saying Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, you are encouraging within your heart an inspiring aspect of mana, of conceit. In that sense, this is using it with sila. This is using it with panya. This is discernment as being taught by Venerable Ananda in this context. So here, earlier I was mentioning about the pragmatic aspect or pragmatism of the Dhamma, but here we also see the relativity of the Dhamma as well. So it's not categorical in this sense. That's why it's called also the Majjhima Pada, as Venerable Nyananda would say. Those two aspects, pragmatism and relativity of the Dhamma, set it apart. That's why it's the middle path, he says. Then, after some time has passed, and while being supported by the tendency to compare and conceit, he abandons conceit altogether. Every single one of the Arahants, before they became Arahants, had conceit. You, as we see here, Venerable Ananda saying, in fact, it is a necessary ingredient. It's a prerequisite. It's a prerequisite. Imagine that. Tanha is a prerequisite if you use it correctly. If you use it correctly, underline that in your mind. When Venerable Anuruddha went to Venerable Sariputta, he was saying, Avuso, friend, my concentration is so strong that I have the ability to see the 10,000 galaxies. I hear the Brahma gods, I hear the Devas, as if they're here. I see them. I know what they're thinking, despite differences, distances. I have tremendous effort. I have such a strong vidya. But for some reason, despite all this, despite the fact that I can sit for hours in meditation, I still cannot attain to that level of serenity. I still have not tasted freedom, basically, he's saying. And Venerable Sariputta says, my friend, what you have in you is conceit, but it's not the right type of conceit as we see here in this sutta. But it allowed Venerable Anuruddha to have the proper kind of mana. Why? Because he walks away from that encounter with Venerable Sariputta, and he's in his heart there is it's ignited, because he sees in the eyes, in the presence of Venerable Sariputta, a fellow bhikkhu who's a chief disciple. He sees in his eyes arahantship. That lights up in his heart the longing for, if he could do it, I could as well. Because Venerable Sariputta says, friend, forget about all this Dibba Chakku and all these nonsense. Just focus on the Amatadat, the deathless. That's enough. That's enough for Venerable Anuruddha to go ahead. And with the help of Lord Buddha, his teacher, within 2 vasas, he becomes an arahant. You need that ignition. You need that fuel. That's why Kalyana Mittas are necessary. If you can't find true Kalyana Mittas, that's okay. You have the suttas. All the arahants are your Kalyana Mittas. Lord Buddha is the ultimate. That's why we have to go back again and again and again to the suttas to understand, to ignite that proper level of craving, that proper level of conceit, compare and contrast rather. Therefore, sister, this is the meaning behind the statement. This body is the product of comparing and conceit. And while being supported by the tendency to compare, one should abandon conceit. So conceit has to be eliminated through conceit, just like earlier we saw with craving and food. This is the interesting part. Now, sister, this body is the product of sexual intercourse. So now he's just going after the jugular. But the Blessed One has declared unequivocally how sexual intercourse destroys the very bridge that takes us to the goal of the holy life. There is no if and but about this. Sex or sexual interest, or in any context, in any form, will destroy the holy life. This has to be clearly understood. In a time period where we have seen, and we do see sadly, so many people carrying their own narratives as they had while being lay people. Now, even in robes, sometimes sadly, I come across some bhikkhus who are promoting some element of sexual interest, talking about sexual identifications and defending, promoting in a sense, certain sexual lifestyle. They're not saying we practice this, but they are promoting it in some form or another. They don't go together. The robes and anything to do with sex don't go together. Disrobe and go back to that life and defend it without robes, in your lay clothing, in your suit or something, or in a skirt, but not in the bhikkhu's robes. This I say because currently there are individuals, Theravada monks, who promote such topics. They are on committees. Well, they completely miss the boat. Completely. There's no place for sex in the holy life, at least when we're supposed to be living it fully. Now, as lay people, of course, I encourage students who are lay people who come with this fear or dread or concern, at least, that Bhante, do I need to give up sex in order for me to be practicing the holy life as a layperson? And I say, no. As a layperson, you can function until you become an anagami, of course. But there's a long way to go for that. Go ahead. But remember, you cannot force viraga to occur either. The dispassionate state to come about in your life, or disenchantment. You cannot force that. I'm going to be passionless. That is forcefulness. It comes on its own. So long as you're practicing, and you're maintaining sila, and you're going deeper and deeper into understanding yourself, the principles in the sasana, slowly, slowly, things appear about you, and your own mental processes and your narratives, previous narratives, fall apart. They get loose. They just are released. Yatha bhutang pajanati. You start seeing how things come to be. Naturally, there arises within the person, the practitioner, levels of disenchantment and levels of dispassion and renunciation. So there is no forcefulness here. But so long as the person is living the life of a monastic, sex and monasticism in any shape or form, in any kind, any hue, any coloration, don't go together. Because it's not just you putting on robes and that's it. While I take the container full of my own ideas and attachments with me in robes, nevertheless. No, absolutely not. That has to be cut fully. So that is the confusion that we see here in the Bhikkhuni, who is now getting a wonderful admonishment from Venerable Ananda. So, and notice that among the four, food, craving, conceit, and then methuna. Methuna is the sex in Pali, methuna. And it's also, there's a wonderful, actually a few suttas in the Anguttara Nikāya where Lord Buddha really delves into this, especially in relation to living the holy life for a bhikkhu or a bhikkhuni who come as male and female, but they have to fully relinquish even that gender and every connotation, everything related with that. Today in this culture where there's this identification, that identification, yes, I keep changing my interests, this and that, it's up to how I feel, this and that. All that nonsense goes out the window. Has no place in the Sangha, period. It has no place in the holy life. Even as a heterosexual or non-heterosexual, guess what? All that has to be dropped. That's why we look the same. Someone was asking me, why do you all bhikkhus have to shave their head and this and that and wear the same thing? Yeah, there is, so that you don't see yourself, oh, I'm more beautiful than you over there, or I'm this, look at this. I see sometimes, though, people carrying all that narrative, that drama with them while in robes. So this is a wonderful sutta to help us see, wait a minute. That has nothing to do. And Venerable Ananda clearly states, the bridge of the holy life will be destroyed if you keep on thinking even about sex, let alone joke about it. One time I had a one Mahatera. I was shocked. I was perhaps naive when I heard him tell a joke. I thought, so what's the punchline? And then he came back, do you get it? Suddenly I got what he was saying, but I had completely did not match the dotted line, basically, because I was seeing this person as a bhikkhu. But he was talking to me as if I had been 15 years earlier standing at the watering hole talking with colleagues about, telling a joke with sexual innuendos and things. That doesn't go with the holy life. Has no place in the holy life. Whether you're in private or in public. So each of these four, actually 3 of these 4 are essential, he says. They have the opportunity, they are the opportunity, shall we say, of churning into the holy life. They become fuel for the holy life, but not the 4th one. Not the 4th one. The sexual part, that bit of, it's like food. You can use food for elimination of food. You can use craving for the elimination of craving. You can even use conceit for the elimination of craving. But unfortunately, you had sects, groups, or traditions within the sasana, within the Buddhist tradition that showed up over time that even added the 4th one. You can use sex to get rid of sex. That is what you see in Tantrayana, in Vajrayana, sadly. Even though now they, I think one time the Dalai Lama was saying how, oh, no, that's no longer practiced. But when you go into what they call the secret tantras and things like that in Vajrayana, you see it clearly demonstrated there. In fact, one of the heads of the branches of Tantrayana, where many other Vajrayana branches come from, which is the Kagyu tradition. And they have the lineage holder, one of them, after Tilopa, especially in the Kagyu tradition. After Tilopa, there was Naropa. Naropa was one of the Bhikkhu teachers at Nalanda. But he got kicked out because he was engaging in sexual intercourse with Dakinis and other practices of Mahasiddhas and other non-Buddhist traditions that were going on. To this day, they are revered. You see this in sculptures all around Vajrayana, tankas and sculptures and in temples and things like that. But it's always interpreted as, no, it's just a symbolism of the male and female energy type of a thing. But no, it's far more than that. And even, let's say that is the case, but that imagery does not go with the Dhamma. We just taken the 5 precepts. As bhikkhus, we take the abrahmacharya, right? To stay away from, the actions that are abrahmacharya, not helping. So basically, we live a celibate life. How can a person be celibate? But right behind him, there's sculptures and pictures of sexual intercourse going on. Pornography. These are things that were non-Buddhist that came about. To this day, they are being promoted in one form or another. But Venerable Ananda is saying, absolutely not. This is what happens when there is miccāditthi, when people forget about the suttas, or they present their own interpretations of the suttas and create new suttas or sutras, as in the case of Mahayana and Vajrayana. Because the 3, you can use them to overcome them. Food, craving, and conceit. But sex, there is no way to be able to do that. Otherwise, Lord Buddha would have allowed the bhikkhus to go ahead and have sex. There you go. So this is important because we have another sutta, because someone can say, well, how does chanda or the desire part, we use the word craving, but desire itself as a key factor, always we talk about, again, some people say Buddhism is against desire, which is again wrong view. We have a sutta in the that's called in the Samyutta Nikāya, it's called Brahmana Sutta, where we have a Brahmin come to Venerable Ananda and he's asking questions as to what is the holy life all about. And he says, what is necessary? What is the key ingredient to live the holy life? And Venerable Ananda says, chanda, desire in a sense. But then when he's asked again in a different form, he says the 4 basis of spiritual success, or sometimes called the basis of psychic power, iddhipada. Well, guess what number 1 is? Chanda. In one way, Venerable Ananda is saying chanda has to be removed, but in another way, Venerable Ananda is saying chanda is the first step, because those are the 4 steps that are necessary to live the holy life. Okay, now you can understand the dilemma that the Brahmin had when he was asking these questions. He says, Bhante, I think you're contradicting yourself. And Venerable Ananda gives him a beautiful analogy. And he says, you are now at the monastery here. We are having this discussion and you're asking these questions and I'm answering you. Yes? Yes, he says. Well, you had first the desire, didn't you? The fervor to want to come. Yes, the man says. Then you had the energy, the effort that you put in, persevering effort to walk all this distance or get on your chariot and drive and come here? He says, yes. And then he says, you had the will, the directed mind to maintain that course and not go somewhere else to another monastery, but just to come and see me. And he says, yes. And now you're sitting here and you're examining and investigating what I'm saying. Yes? Yes. So he says, what happened to that desire that you had? What happened to that persevering effort to maintain that course? You had that will to that investigation. Are you still carrying those? And the man pauses and he says, no, Bhante. He says, what happened? I dropped them when I got here. You dropped Chanda when? When Chanda served its purpose. Do you see now how pragmatic the Dhamma is? So we should not just look at the Dhamma and especially when we're looking at these principles and teachings in black and white manner. That is simplistic. That is stupid. That doesn't fit. But then again, you have people, academicians, go ahead and write theses and books and things just on this topic. Pick any of them. And they entirely miss the boat. And that's why the Dhamma has to be applied in one's own life, which demonstrates itself in the form of your behavioral changes, your own behavioral changes that must occur to the better, for the better. And there needs to be an expansion of your understanding, not by the addition of new theories and ideas. Ideas and theories are not panya, okay? So two things must increase in you, in the person, sati and panya. Those two things, you have that, enlightenment, awakening, Nibbāna is right at the corner for you. Two things, sati until it turns into mahasati, where you're always holding the hand of sati, wherever you go, whatever happens to you. Inevitably, as long as you're following with the suttas, paying attention to the suttas, reading the suttas, contemplating the things that you read in the suttas, panya will grow until it turns into mahapanya. So this path is not an aimless or an endless path. It has an actual end point. It has an aim. It's specific. In a culture where we're going, in a time period where everything, yeah, anything goes. Yeah, it's up to you. Sometimes I would read articles, recent, statements. Sometimes I would hear, when I was a kid, I used to, with my dad, I was forced to because that was the only channel that he would put on, like the news. I would see politicians talking or trying to answer questions. And at the end, I'm like completely like, Dad, what did he answer? I didn't get the answer. It was a big, foggy, non-conclusive, aimless, beating around the bush type of an answer, a lawyer type of answer, right? Nothing definite, nothing that you can hold on and say, yes, this is it, okay, this is it, concrete, nothing. Aimless, endless at the same time. This path has a graduation date. It has a graduation point. It has an aim. It has an end point. And that is the culmination of the holy life, where the person sees for oneself. Tanhakaya, the elimination of tanha. Kinasava, the ending of the elimination of the asavas. The person oneself sees this for oneself. You don't need to go and get someone's certification, confirmation letter. None of that. If you do need it, you're not there, by the way. That's also a wonderful way of knowing. It has an end point. There is a graduation. because this path is definitive. It is unmistakable. Going back to the sutta, then realizing her unwholesome intention and behavior, that Bhikkhuni got up from under her bed and the covers, and after quickly putting on her robes, she fell to the ground and paid homage to the Venerable Ananda, with her head at his feet, exclaiming, "Bhante, I beg for your forgiveness, for I have committed an offense due to my foolishness, my stupidity, and unskillful conduct. Please, Bhante, pardon me for my offense, as I promise I will exercise restraint from now on." Sister, there is indeed an offense that you committed here, due to your foolishness, your stupidity, and unskillful conduct. But as you are able to see your offense and ask for my forgiveness, then, in accordance with the Dhamma, we accept your apology and forgive you. This is a proper way, so long as the person really intends to make good on their promise, meaning they really are remorseful of what they did or were planning to, and they didn't physically act on it. So, and they're coming forward and admitting this. So the Lord Buddha, in the Vinaya text, we see this, to promote the sasana and to enhance the level of faith in the person, but especially in the whole entire community of Buddhists, then the apology has to be there. The forgiveness, I'm sorry, the forgiveness has to be given to the person, because remorse is one of the worst poisons ever. That's one of the reasons why I highly encourage students, anyone taking the 5 precepts or more, when they see that they have broken any of the precepts, instead of holding on to it, it is a leech. It will kill you from the inside. It will disrupt your mind. It will agitate your mind. You will be, it's a terrible, thing to be holding on to. You need to release yourself from that. Find someone you truly appreciate. Use the image of a Lord Buddha, statue of a Buddha. Imagine sitting among the beings that you respect, and just bow down and say, I am sorry, I apologize for this, and I will not do it again because I feel horrible about it. Even if it's a thought or a word. And just see what happens. The mind, if you really meant those words, it will release itself. Remorse is terrible. It's beyond just being a mere nivarana. It's not just a hindrance, it's a poison. And it cannot help you to have any level of metta. It's impossible. You cannot be compassionate towards anyone. You might just go through the routines. It's just pretending. Because you're burning inside. Your heart is being pushed and squeezed the life out of it. So please be aware of that remorse and get rid of it as soon as possible. Not by having more dosa or anger, by pushing it away. No, by seeing it for what it is and saying, I'm even sorry for having this anger towards having remorse. Okay? Breathe. And come back to your natural, deep goodness. Think about something wonderful you've done. Think about your virtue, your sila. Can anyone have and maintain a virtuous life like you? Think about that. And just say, no, I give myself some credit. That's okay. Pay attention to that goodness in your heart. That's not being facetious or being megalomaniac or narcissistic or something like. No, you're just being factual. You're just acknowledging something. And just See it as it dissolves. And Venerable Ananda continues, for it is a sign of growth in the noble one's discipline when one sees their offense as an offense and asks for pardon according to the Dhamma, as one promises to exercise restraint from now on. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So we were able to finally finish the sutta, and thank you for being here listening. And I know I said I have to get up every 35 or 45 minutes as per the doctor's instructions to be walking, but I would like to see if at least I can answer one question, if there is one. Are there any questions?
Bhante, I have a question.
Hmm.
Thank you so much, first of all, for the discourse. A quick question related to the sutta. Recently, I saw a photo of a bhikkhuni or a nun online, and she was wearing her robe like a monk would wear, with this, in a way that the shoulder and the neck and the arm, excuse me, was exposed. And now that I'm thinking about it, to me, the content of the sutta, what the bhikkhuni did in the sutta, and the modern day phenomenon that I witnessed in this photo, I think there is an overlap here in terms of some form of breaking of sila. My question to you is: do you think there is a breaking of sila for a nun to wear her robe, just like a man, where clearly it, to me, it attracts, invites even a certain type of attention that is unwholesome for a monastic? So do you think that's acceptable, or if not, then why? How could this be a fact, a reality in our day and time? Thank you.
It's a sad thing to hear this because, well, first of all, one of your questions was, is this breaking a sila? I don't know, because I just don't know if they are engaging in anything else. If they are, it's actually parajika, which is a defeat, and she's no longer monastic. She's out, and she cannot, if she commits something, but I don't want to presume such a thing. But as far as sila is being broken or not, I don't know, because that doesn't give me enough data. However, does it cause breaking of sila? Absolutely. Because how can I be promoting someone or students, lay people, or bhikkhus or monastics to be guarding their sixth sense doors? And most of your data, perceptual data, that you're alive, that you're in life, comes through the eyes. Comes through the eyes. Most of you, the information comes through the eyes. How can a person actually sit and watch this or listen to this nun giving a Dhamma talk, or even walking on Pintapada? I don't know if she was standing or sitting, but in fact, nuns have to have, whether they're just anagarikas or novice or even bhikkhunis, they need to have an extra layer to cover their shoulder. They have to have an extra item than bhikkhus. That's known. And I don't know, maybe she had run out of things to wear. I don't know how that would be possible, but that's a big no-no. But what you have is basically, unfortunately, a lot of feminists. Feminists came through, feminism rather came through many phases. The first two phases were wonderful. They were necessary. They were, really necessary to bring the sense of equality and respect towards women. However, what happened was basically other phases of it came in, where you have a lot of like, no, it's this, I have to have, there's a lot of dosa, there's a lot of anger to the point where the very wonderful things that feminism was purportedly supposed to defend and was a voice or a beacon for, that itself, well, it turned into the perpetrator. It turned to the very thing that they hated the most. So I've seen this personally in some individuals, or females in my life. But I've also heard and seen bhikkhunis or nuns promoting that narrative now as nuns, where, well, if the bhikkhu is supposed to, if a bhikkhu can wear that, how come I can't wear that? Well, hold on. For some time, there were no bhikkhuni order allowed by Lord Buddha, exactly for this reason. And in fact, 8 required rules had to be placed by Lord Buddha in order for him to allow the bhikkhuni order to form. And now you have even bhikkhunis claiming that those 8 rules were set up later in life. They were in the sasana. So these were added later by misogynists and all those type of bhikkhus and, you know, male dominated. And that's how one of the ways you can actually eliminate the argument, in a sense, by removing the data, by saying, oh, this was just added later. And now, so everything is back to, you know, it's a leveled field. But without going too much into a tangent, it's very basic human elements, like consideration, rather, common sense. If a teacher walks in wearing very revealing clothing, male or female, doesn't make a difference. How can the student is supposed to be paying attention? For example, rules have to be followed. But you're not dealing with arahants. People are not arahants, or people are not anagamis yet. Sometimes I've seen nuns even tighten, really squeeze the robes around their body until you start seeing the actual figure of a woman. Guess what? That also defeats the whole purpose of being a monastic. I've once seen a nun, a bhikkhuni actually, who had done her eyebrows and makeup. I was stunned. I was a layman then. But I looked at her and I was just like stunned. So these are dangerous factors, and these clearly tell me, with evidence, they serve as evidence, that the sasana is dying. Because we see this also in the suttas. One of the things that will happen is people who claim to be bhikkhus or monastics, they're going to promote things that are adhamma. This is adhamma. Because the very purpose for a monastic to be a monastic is for the promotion of the sasana, not oneself. Not for the bhikkhu to show off their biceps. Look how my pecs are looking. And they, you know, there's one bhikkhu, Thai forest tradition, a Westerner, who would live in Sri Lanka. Now I think he's back to, I think, Serbia or somewhere. We have to have robes, you know, we have 3 sets. But there's one set, it's not a set actually, it's just one that we have to, and it's not even in the Vinaya, but it was allowed for the Sangha to wear in humid and hot places to protect the robes. So especially if you're engaged in working somewhere, doing something which is arduous work and you're sweating, and it's very difficult to maneuver with the robes, the upper robe on. So it's just a piece of cloth that it just folds, and it has 2 pieces of string that you tie from one side. And so, you know, it's just, there's a name for it in Thai, I forgot, but basically I have those as well. But he would pick the tightest pieces of those, and he would really sit there, and you would see his trapezius muscles. I used to be a fitness trainer, so I would know if the person has worked on themselves or not physically. The shoulders, And it's always wet. For some reason, it's always wet. It's very suggestive. It's very provocative. There was even like a calendar of his pictures. Well, how is that helping the sasana? What is that? Earlier, I was saying food is not for beautification. That same principle must apply here as well. So it might sound shocking to hear that we are living in the end days of the sasana, but this, I don't think it should shock us. But it doesn't mean that we should just ignore these things. At least we need to acknowledge that these things are happening and not just go on in the, along with the bandwagon and just say, oh, he's just a wonderful speaker, or she's just a wonderful nun because she used to be an actress. Now she's given up Bollywood and now she's, well, how is she wearing? What is this? So simply because a person is wearing robes does not mean they are holier than thou, that they are truly living sila. Okay? Your job as observer, whether you're monastic or lay person, is to apply Vimansaka Sutta's principles that Lord Buddha gave us from the Majjhima Nikāya, the investigation, the examination. So you have the right, given by Lord Buddha himself, to scrutinize the teacher. Well, wait a minute. Why are you showing off your bare, naked shoulder? And you've probably seen me adjust my robe so many times. Well, if I'm not wearing underneath anything, especially if it's hot, and I have just my upper robe, and I have always to adjust. Well, you just have to have some common sense and see what that might end up being for that bhikkhuni or nun if she has nothing else underneath it. And these are ugly. I don't want to think, but you get the point. But these are things that we have to be very watchful and cognizant of, that these things are existing today. And that type of feminism has no place in the sasana. Just like some people have seen some bhikkhus who promote the LGBT thing, movements in the world today. They have been gay, or they are gay, I guess, but even that doesn't make sense to me. I used to be a heterosexual lay person. I cannot talk about that anymore. As a bhikkhu or a bhikkhuni, you're beyond that. You cannot speak about that. Oh, you cannot promote that in any fashion. Why? Because you're presuming to be living the holy life. Venerable Ananda is saying that has nothing to do with the brahmacharya life. If you do want to be engaged in such movements, go ahead in this robe. Don't mess the scene. Don't ruin the sasana more than it is already ruined. Leave your, take off that chip over your shoulder. Just stop it. Unfortunately, you have a lot of bhikkhunis who promote that. You have a lot of bhikkhus today are promoting that. And most of them are Westerners, by the way. But though, whoever's coming from Asia also are catching up. Because this is a disease, this is a virus that's spread all over the world. So, yeah, so I appreciate the question, but it's a disturbing one. The fact, not the question, the fact. Yeah. So I hope it helps. Of course, it's not going to go down well with some people, and that's okay, and I don't care. My loyalty is to the Dhamma. And I don't see any Dhamma in those types of monastics, at least in that part of their behavior. Because the behavior, again, trust the behavior, not the words. Like I always keep saying, trust the behavior, not the words. People trusted Lord Buddha's behavior before they trusted his words, Not everyone heard him speak, but everyone saw him walking. They saw him when people were offering him food into his bowl. He was so respectful of that distance. He didn't even engage in eye contact with the giver, the donor of the food, especially if it was a female. But it doesn't make sense, any difference between a male or female donor. But he would never look at the person. So there's not going to be any preferential. Today you have bhikkhus and bhikkhunis and nuns, and you know, they engage in conversations while on Pindapad, laughing. Theravada monks, no? Thai monks, Thai forest monks that claim to be, you know, the most, avid protectors of the Vinaya, livers of the Vinaya. That's not true, most of the cases. Again, this is not to put down one group over the other. It's just an encouragement for us to go back to the source. Go back to Lord Buddha's example. You know, he was a warrior. He was a martial artist, Lord Buddha. He was a prince, young prince. He didn't walk around showing off his muscles, his physique. So those examples, you know, should not, the contemporariness of it should not make us be blinded to the fact whether, if it is really inappropriate. And that image, that picture is absolutely inappropriate, the way you described it. It's a no-no. And I don't know who her upajjhaya is. That's just, you know, that's a big no-no. She should have been admonished and actually chastised for that. And I hope somebody did, so she's not doing that again, but who knows? So anyhow, I think I will stop here and let us share some merit. Hey, by the way, if you have any questions, do send them my way, even though I said only one question, please. So please send them my way if you feel like I didn't answer, I could answer. May suffering ones be suffering free and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief and may all beings find health relief. May all beings share in these merits that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of wholesome happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share in these merits of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May you be well. May the triple gem continue glowing in your heart. May you identify the Dhamma in your heart. May the defilements in your heart come loose. And may the light of Dhamma shine through. And you attain the highest Magga Phala Nibbāna in this very life. In this very life. In this very life. Be well. Yes, I don't know if next week I will be in shape to give a Dhamma talk, so I don't want to promise that this will be a weekly thing for now until my health, I recuperate fully. But please keep an eye out on the emails, announcements from Dhammadina, and I'm going to try to do them as often as possible, as I feel can. So, but you'll be posted. You will be kept posted, I guess. Yeah. You will get the information in time. Be well. Until next time. Sukhya Hotu.